If you fall, ask yourself and get better and better and better at answering this question. Why did you really fall? And don't assume it's strength. Don't assume it's not strength, actually, right? Because you're going to get stronger. We're going to work on those buffer rooms. People like Serato seemingly don't need that because of how good he is at asking and answering those questions. Why did I fall? So if you can rely on that, you don't really need that much strength. If you can't really rely on that so much, or you don't want to, work on both. But I'll tell you this for a fact. The more your buffer room exists, the harder it is to answer and ask those questions. It's a guarantee. I guarantee you it's more difficult to understand truly why you can't do something if you have more buffer room to say like, but I can just pull harder. I can just squeeze this hold harder. That's so confusing for people.
Welcome to the Testpiece podcast. This podcast is about all things high-level climbing. How to go from good to great. I'm your host, Joshua Horsley. I've been climbing for over 30 years. We recently updated our Patreon, and now you get exclusive content from the guests that you love. You get your episodes before everyone else, and they're ad-free. Try it out now at patreon.com/testpiece with a free 7-day trial. Okay, let's start the show.
Tim, my dude, how's it going, man?
Josh, good morning. It is a good morning.
Wasn't that like a really good, deep-voiced intro? I thought I did a good job there.
I like that. Yeah, you're always really good at that.
Thanks, man. Well, I do it the same way every freaking time. And Tim, it's episode 100, so done quite a few intros like that. So hopefully
it's
they get better.
Actually episode 100. That's awesome.
It is. Although I think we were talking about this before. It's like, should we do something for episode 100? And then we had some analogy to that sport climbing thing about clipping the chains. And it's like, it's not about clipping the chains. It's just about climbing your best. And then if you happen to get to the chains, great. And so I took that into the podcasting thing. It's like, it doesn't matter what number you're at or what you get to. It's just about showing up, doing your best, and having fun along the way.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But it's funny because when I don't know, probably episode 70 or so, I was like, oh, we should do something cool for episode 100. And when we chat yesterday about this topic, I was like, oh, this is like the perfect discussion and all the news and everything. Like, I'm pretty psyched for this episode. Yeah, let's get into it.
I like that. Spoiler, the topic is good. Well, okay, on that topic of just fun and being psyched, I had a little reflection moment, as old people do sometimes. And I had a blast just climbing. And I feel like, Tim, you're getting healthy. I'm healthy, climbing strong. And yeah, sometimes you have these moments when you're feeling good and you are just enjoying life and climbing well, and you have your crew and the conditions are good. You got a good project. And you think that that's just kind of going to be what it's always like. And you sometimes forget to just be like, oh, this is sick. Like, this is fun. And I think it helps as I get older, where I have had more down periods, whether they're injury or, my crew disbands because someone gets a job or moves away or a gym closes, something goes wrong. And, for everyone out there, for you, Tim, for me, if things are going good, just like, don't take it for granted. Like, just sit back, enjoy it. And I feel like it's such a trite thing to say, like, don't take it for granted, just enjoy it. But I think what I really mean is, if things are going well, don't get bummed about dumb things like, oh, you didn't send your project today, or, oh, you wish you were stronger. Like, or just try not to like have those negative things get into your head when things are going good. And so, yeah, man, just feeling appreciative, enjoying myself right now.
Nice, dude. I had a really similar, when I saw Brennan, my buddy Brennan yesterday, we were talking a little bit just about like how cool climbing was. We both started climbing when we were teenagers. I was 13 and he was a couple years older. And I think we lived such a long life and also a really amazing culture during that time, and just like definitely took it for granted. But I don't think we ever had like too many negative situations like that. It's just that now if I ever feel that same thing that I used to feel every single day of my life, I very much appreciate it. And negativity in your life, like running into something that might provoke a negative emotion, is like kind of inevitable. I'm learning, and hopefully people don't do that, right? But I think it's inevitable. And so like because of that, if you have a happy thing, just like enjoy it. Enjoy it all. You're totally right. You can just ruin your happy moments. Everyone can just ruin their happy moments. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be here with you, man. And this week provided us with some amazing news and media to talk about. Tim, do we want to talk about the Moonboard first, or do we want to talk about Yanya doing Boogle Eyes and Sit? Which one? Which place should we go?
I was like, yeah, what could beat the Moonboard? But dude, Yanya, I'm sure you guys all know Yanya did Bugle Eyes and Sit. If you don't know, Bugle Eyes and Sit was a climb that I remember coming out on YouTube as like one of the earliest V16s that came out, like in terms of footage. Nale did it. It was a really cool clip. It was only like a 10-minute or less. I think it's still up there. You guys should watch. Epic TV dropped it, I think. And it was Nale's FA. And I think now it's standardized at V15, which still is obviously extremely high up there. I don't even know when it got downgraded or who downgraded it, but I always knew it as a V16. It has a stand start that Yanya did before pretty quickly as well. And I don't know, just watching, like knowing a previous kind of process of like Nale, watching Nale do it, it looks super hard. Like the conditions seem really difficult. It's such a steep line. And it's like really consistent movement for your body you just get hit in the same muscle groups. That looks really difficult. And just to hear Yanya's story, like reading first you watch the video of her just like destroying it and climbing really smooth. And then you realize that was a repeat because she was unhappy with her first send. And she was like, I had to repeat it for the video. And then she says she like figured it out and did it in like 30 minutes, which is like, what? Like, what the heck? Crazy, dude.
Go Yanya. Me and Tim were just texting each other. As soon as we saw that drop, we're just like, dude, that's amazing. And I remember when Nale did that FA, and yeah, I remember getting like the slash grade or 16, whatever. What that means to me is Yanya's first V15 is gorgeous. It's steep. It's consistent. It's a king line or a test piece, whatever, it's cool when you see people step into a new grade in a way that's very plant your flag. Like, I'm a V15 climber, not you've never heard of this. It's like a link up and it might be no one ever even talks about it. Maybe it's V15. It's like, that is a sought after line if you watch the video, you'll see why. It's gorgeous, man. And I would also say, like, not that this matters exactly, but I wouldn't call it comp style. I would call it traditional overhung. I think the FA of it, I could be wrong so internet, don't yell at me. I want to say it was Marcus Bach, which is kind of like this old school German power climber. And it's a very old school looking line, despite maybe how steep it is. It's so steep that's a little more, I won't call it new school, but it's not from the 80s. So good job, Yanya. Fuck yeah. So cool.
I also caught a bit of flack, like a long time ago now. I think it was over a year ago, or on one of our episodes, kind of went over Yanya. I made a comment that said it was really unlikely that we could call her the GOAT, because so many people at that time, especially, were just like calling her the GOAT. And I think for me, maybe the GOAT is just a trigger word, because I really take that seriously. If you're going to call someone the GOAT, it's the greatest of all time. I really take that seriously. And I kind of made a comment to Josh yesterday when we were talking about this. I was like, well, this is a good way to get her to that status, right? Of like climbing something that is, we know in standard climbing is very difficult. And the reason why I said that before, that we can't really call her the GOAT yet, is because what are we testing her on? Like, who are we testing her against? And competition in general is very, very difficult to use as a metric to like give someone GOAT status. And so it's not a hit on her at all. I think she's a phenomenal athlete. I think she could be one of the greatest of all time athletes and climbers. Absolutely. If someone asked me that, could she be, considered one of the greatest of all time climbers? I would say yes. I would not call her the GOAT. But watching her do this and like seeing her process on it, watching her climb it, actually, I was like, wow, she is one of the greatest climbers of all time for sure.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this GOAT idea, which, by the way, I think it's like the worst acronym ever. I don't know, like GOAT in my mind does not make me think of the greatest of all time. It makes me think of a goat, like an actual physical goat. Didn't some guy, there was some runner, this is probably too old for you, Tim. There's some famous sprinter. I'm going to say Michael Johnson. I don't know. I could be totally wrong on this. And he was a 100-meter sprinter, and then he got GOAT tattooed on him. I believe.
Whoa.
And then, his time gets beat and stuff. And it's just like, it's why you should be very careful with those words, goat. And especially if you want to get tattooed on you. Yeah. I think when we talked about Yanya, and of course I gave you pushback on that too, because the argument would be, hey, she is winning all these comps and she's winning at a rate that we hadn't seen before. And I think that where some of that nuance is that there's a lot of amazing female climbers out there, but it feels like that field is still maturing and we're still going to find better and better climbers. And since that conversation happened around Yanya, we've seen Natalia, Brooke, was it Oriane Bertone? I think I really like watching her climb personally. I think she still has room to grow too. And so let's talk about in 10 years. Let's see how many people are competing at that level in 10 years. When I say at that level, I mean physically, not necessarily they'll be winning like she is. And so that's the nuance there, where not to take anything away from her, it's just, maybe the best is yet to come still.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the guys' field in any World Cup level competition, the finals, you could argue that in almost every attribute or metric, the guys are pretty close, like very close. And so when you have a level like that, and then you see somebody winning consistently, Tomoa is arguably like a lot more impressive to watch over time, because it's like, how is he winning those events? And so that's why I kind of pull back and said, like, look, it doesn't seem that unlikely that Yanya is supposed to win every single event. And it's not necessarily a hit on every other female athlete. It's just to show how much better she is than every other female athlete out there. And it's not the case nowadays. Josh is totally right. And I definitely agree. I think a lot of the women are stepping up. But the saturation of the field is what we should be looking at in terms of like how close they are to her level. Because like on paper, I think even Brooke and Natalia and like Katie Lamb, Michaela Kirsch, they're all sending even outside like pretty close. But again, it's like comp style stuff, even size, like she's just bigger than a lot of those girls. The way that they set for those girls seems to favor her a lot more as well. I have a lot of nuanced read on that type of stuff. I just will still stand by it. I think it's unfair to say that based on the saturation of the field that she competes against. Easier to say that for Tomoa.
Yeah, I agree with that relation or that analogy to Tomoa in mad respect to him. I would argue, to put a fun, optimistic spin on it too, is that my hunch is that the next 5 years in women's competing will be really interesting, because we're going to see we're going to see higher saturation of female climbers with incredible attributes. And it's probably means that there's going to be less variation in those attributes and those theoretical physical abilities. And now we're starting to talk about comp specific abilities, mental execution, how it shows up. And so it probably means that there's great times ahead for us as spectators.
Yeah. Comps will also change. That is a guess of mine, but it's also a statement. Whether I have something to do with it or not, comps will change. The comp scene right now is just very volatile. It's amazing to watch consistency because of how volatile the style could be. And you can power through the volatility a lot in the style right now. I don't think the setting is great. I don't think it's great for competition. I don't think it's great to like get people who are actually really good at climbing to the top. And so as you see comps get better in that setting as well, I think you're gonna see more consistent athletes. And then, when you get more consistently good athletes competing together, that's the whole level increases, right? So it relies on that system to work as well.
Okay, well let's go back indoors. I'm glad I couldn't resist talking about Yanya just first off, because that line is something that I've always admired. Bugeleisen.
Yeah.
Everyone go watch that video. I'll link it in the show notes if you haven't heard of it. It's just beautiful. It's kind of some of the most classic imposing climbing, where you walk up to a steep wall with perfect rails that just barely goes, but actually in some ways it looks more consistent than just barely goes. Like it's really gorgeous. So wanted to touch on that. And Tim, let's just get taken into the indoors. I was going to say it's completely different, but actually if you look at Moonboard, it kind of isn't so different from Bugeleisen, just maybe a little less impressive. So yeah, it sounds like, Tim, you've been getting on the new Moonboard set, the 2024, the Blues in the Woods. And yeah, how's that going?
Yeah, well, I got to pull on for the first time 2 days ago during a climbing session. We luckily had at Refuge in Vegas, we had the 2024 set really early on. So I've been to the gym like 10 times, I think, and seen the 2024 set. But it was the first time I pulled on was 2 sessions ago. I have my own reasons for that. Always somebody was on the board. Sometimes I just wanted to climb with Michaela, and board climbing in my current state of like returning was really, really hard for me. And so I didn't really want to push my knee or anything, or like push. This style of climbing on the board is generally pretty aggressive, and like it's not what I want to teach myself, like getting back into climbing. I told Josh when we went to Colorado together that the tension board was the first time I actually pulled on a board this year, and that was just a couple weeks ago. And so I was climbing with this other guy named Andrew, and he was super strong, and he was like, "Oh, I'm climbing on the board. Like, if you want to join." And I was like, "Okay, sure. Like, I'll go join you on the board." And it was towards kind of the end of the session, and dude, I had so much fun right away. Like, just immediately going on and like looking at some of the benchmarks. I was like, there weren't that many benchmarks up. I think I filtered V7 and up, and there was only 27 benchmarks, and so it just sounds like it's kind of standard for a lot of people just to look through non-benchmarks. But that just goes to show you, how do people use the system? Or at least like me, how do I use the system? A lot of people will just go on, click benchmarks. So it is very reliant on this system working really well. I'm sure they're working on it, but it's been up for months now. And like, you know, people probably want to go and like climb benchmarks. But anyway, I went on and climbed a couple benchmarks from like V7 and then kind of went up to 10. And I was surprised, man. Like, I think a lot of people had given me some, you know, thoughts that I would have before I went on the board. I remember talking to Ravioli Biceps during the season, and I asked him like how he thought about the board. He really liked it, but he said that a lot of people were also telling him like maybe their kind of negative thoughts on it. Dude, I climbed this board and it was amazing. Like, I thought it was super, super fun. It is definitely still like the Moonboard, except it's much heavier on like more rounded holds. Like, it's not that classic like bite aggression that you have. It's still aggressive style, like you still climb very aggressively, but at least what I climbed, it was a lot more of the wood and a lot more of the blue holds were like a lot of pinches. And something I said to Josh yesterday was that the plastic, or something I've been saying a lot, is like the plastic, even though it's plastic, it's not like, okay, TB2 plastic is like, it's like gym hold plastic. It's like, it feels really nice. It's like sticky, and it's like just fun to climb on. But then it's got the wood, so it helps to like force you to also grab a little bit harder, and like the friction's a little bit different. On the Moonboard, the black and white holds for me generally are like the worst type of plastic I could ever grab personally. So I don't like it, but it's really good for its type of training. So I do think it's got a time and a place for it. The blue plastic is like a much finer texture, and it's still like sticky right when you grab it, but when you start gripping it and like pulling on, man, you can like dry fire off. You really feel like you have to fight the wall. And it kind of, for me, it forces me to climb like sloppy. It forces me to climb a little bit more aggressively, which I like teaching myself through that. And on slopier holds, it just lasts way longer. Like, you can just do that for a lot longer. And so I can see myself climbing on that board and training like a ton and still getting something different than I would get on the Kilter or the TB2.
Ooh, I'm psyched. I've got the holds in my garage sitting there, ready to
you got
put
them
on. I got them. Yeah, I just haven't put them up.
Put them on.
Well, so you're getting me really psyched for a few reasons. I do like the pinchier, slopier, rounded stuff. I don't know. It to me, it suits what it really is, honestly, is I'm better at it. So I like it. And I like pinching, man. I just like pinching. Dude. And so I'm super psyched. And I remember reading something about the holds that they have now for the blue holds that they have now are a different kind of plastic. Like, is it
100%?
It's like PE versus PU.
Okay.
And I should know this. There's like, I should look this up, but if I remember correctly, it's maybe some of the older school style plastic that actually does last longer, but chips easier. And so I think they changed it because they're hoping it will last longer, because those black hole or the black and white holds wear down pretty quick. I know on my board, they're already surprisingly worn down, and I'm the only guy on it. Like,
that's insane.
And really surprised me.
Are the blue holds heavier?
I don't know, because I just haven't taken them out, but I don't remember them being heavier. And that's why I'm like a little hesitant to say like this is an old school technique. But I mean, you know what, fundamentally, there's different kinds of plastic that can be used. And they chose this one that supposedly has better longevity as far as texture and climbing on it. But the drawback, I believe, is that chips easier, which isn't a big deal when you only set it one time. And so it came in the packaging it came in, Tim, is like these crazy bubble wrap things, and each hold has its own hermetically sealed package. It's kind of cool.
Whoa, that's nice.
So you got me psyched.
Nice. One other thing that was really cool about the blue holds, last thing about kind of my because I really didn't climb that much on the Moonboard, so I'll probably give more opinions as I climb more on it. But honestly, the biggest thing I wanted to share is I'm going to be climbing on it a lot more. It's super, super fun. What I really liked about the layout of the holds, which is something that I used to complain about a lot on the Moonboard. I just didn't like how you would have these crazy, weird, bunchy starts. You start on really weird underclings or single hand matches, especially on the 2017 set. You would just pull on and it's not like the feet are good and you're on a steep wall and you just pull on this horrible one-handed crimp and just quickly match it. And it's just I don't know, it's fine to train, but it's just really not enjoyable. And there's jugs. They have a couple of jugs on the blue set, and I think that was the biggest complaint that I heard from a lot of people, which is the holds are too big. And it's okay, first of all, these people haven't climbed on the board yet. The big holds are hard to grab. They still are hard to grab. But there are some jugs, which is pretty nice because it just one of two things. It has more comfortable starts, which is nice, and it's easier to use your feet. And so that's actually huge in my opinion. And it's not just one hold you would just use. I know the 2019 set had this one wooden hold on the bottom that was this very in-cut down pulling jug thing, and you just abuse it, just step on it all the time, or always have a start even on harder climbs, and you just milk that foot all the time. And so have a little bit more variety of good holds on the board is nice. And then the other complaint was that maybe there aren't enough bad holds. There are enough bad holds. For sure. There's some bad blue holds on there.
Are they
cool.
Tiny and crimpy? Are they slopey? When you say bad holds, what do you mean?
So some of them were really thin. I didn't grab a lot of the thin ones just because I'm not in that shape yet. But the ones that I did grab that were bad were yeah, I like that you asked that question because some of them were the weird, sloped in thin pinches, the ones that I have a lot of hard time with, are those thinner sloped pinches. And I was shocked how many times I grabbed a hold and I was that's a lot worse than I thought it was going to look. I would look at it and be oh, no problem. Stick it and be whoa, I got to fight for it now. And just every move I felt like I had to learn a new way of climbing on that board, which is super fun.
I'm psyched. I love hearing that there are really bad holds because despite what people may say about the Moonboard holds, they are surprisingly similar. There are some bad holds, but there's actually not terrible holds. And when you say they're bad, well, there's also no jug. So in some ways, they didn't have that extreme, there's a jug and there's an absolute terrible razor or sloper. And so as a result, that's why I felt the Moonboard grades were a little constrained to the V4 to V11 or 12 range. And you're not going to see V15s on there when you don't have any small holds. And you're also not going to see V0s on there when you have only one jug. So I'm psyched. A gym just opened up nearby me, and it's called The Block, and it's cool. It's a style. It's this kind of new style gym where they have mainly boards, and so there's a TB2, a Moonboard, a kilter board, a spray wall, and then there's some more normal terrain. It's also got interesting style where there's no front desk staff. It's only for members, and you kind of buzz in. I think it's open 24 hours a day too. Anyways, really cool. Just a soft opening, run by climbers, really cool crew there already. And they have a Moonboard, and they put on the 2016 set, which is what's in my garage. And I still have some left. And I've been kind of fighting internally where I want to climb the 2024 set, but I want to do the 2016 ones that are left. But then it's getting hot in my garage, so I can't really do it. So I go to the gym, and they have the 2016 Moonboard, and I'm psyched. And we said a bunch of good things. I'm going to have my classic Moonboard critique. Something that really frustrated me is there was this, I've done all the benchmarks up to V9. I have a couple of V9s left and plenty of double digits left. There was this one 7B, which is a V8, not even the hard V8, the 7B is typically a V8. Yeah, 7B plus is a hard V8 in the font grade. So this was an easier 7B. I'd done all the 7B pluses. I couldn't freaking do it, man. It's called Visualize. It was a lot of V's. Yeah, look it up, Tim. And it had these Gastones on this left hand, a bunch of gas stones and kind of like weirdly pointed black holes that culminates in an off-balance crux. For me, I do it off-balance way that stabs to kind of this middle side pole. And I tried this thing a lot, Tim. I tried it a lot, man. And I couldn't do it. 7B, I tried so much and I kept blowing off. I go to the Moonboard and I start feeling the holds. And some of those holds I have are shallow poured. And I grab them and I'm like, Jesus, man, these things are jugs now. And as I'm warming up, I do it first try. So I flashed up to V11 on this Moonboard set in my garage. I could not do the easy V8, and I warmed up on it first try on a different hold set. It was just frustrating to me. So
that's so wild.
So
yeah,
I'm still putting out there, Moonboard, please solve the consistency issue. And I've heard it's maybe a bit better in the 2024, because also depending on what hold type you have, like if you have a big sloper, it matters less if it's a little bit different of a pour, right? Like, millimeter isn't going to change it. When you have a tiny little in-cut edge, if you shallow pour it, then that in-cut doesn't exist anymore. And so that hopefully that was part of the reasons they switched to that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think it seemed to me really difficult to screw up. I mean, I might eat my own words here, but it seemed difficult to screw up those blue holds. They seemed much, much more standard. They seemed like a much higher quality plastic. Man, I remember the first playing Granite Belmont, I remember the first time I touched the 2016 set and I was like, man, these aren't like very good quality. Like I can't imagine that they're consistent or anything. And lo and behold, they were not. I remember doing this climb, Visual Lisa stock, ... Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah,
that climb.
That thing's hard. I remember.
Yeah,
I remember getting really scrunchy on it, and just like kind of fighting it. But
the beta was just use the bigger holds. Like what? Just find big chip it. I basically chipped it. I'm grateful that the gym near me has one. So I will soon put up the 2024. And I was texting with Steve Rader, who is a Moonboarder, and I don't know if he still is, but he was the number one ranked in the US on the 2019 set. So you got to value his opinion. He's in there, he's doing it. And he put up the 2024 set and has been enjoying it and putting up a bunch of, follow his account because he also does Twitch live streams of his sessions, which is really cool. And he's doing a lot of first ascent, or I shouldn't say first ascents. He's putting up a lot of new things that could be benchmarks. And so just a good guy to follow. And he said that his gym ended up putting up the 2016 set and he got to have that juxtaposition. And he said that the 2016 set feels like old technology now. And I thought that was actually a really good assessment. I'm glad to hear that it felt like 8 years later on this new set that it really had stepped up. It felt, I can't opine on that. I'll just go with what you said, but that was just encouraging to hear from you and from him that it is fun and solves maybe some of the issues that, some of us had over the years.
Yeah, but still definitely Moonboard. I think that was the biggest thing that people kind of were like, oh, it looks like the TB2 or something. It looks like it's not going to have that Moonboard feel. For me, definitely has the Moonboard feel. I'll definitely train on it a lot and it's good stuff.
Okay, let's go back outside and back to media. There's some really cool videos this week, but I just really quickly want to shout out friend of the pod, Zach Gala, mega tick list in Squamish. No one said anything. I didn't know about this. Like, I know you had dinner with him and he said something. I was just cruising around on 8A, just kind of, that's what I do at night. Just look at 8A, look at logbooks. I click on Zach's and I was like, holy shit, dude, in the last week. Okay. I'm just looking at the V14 part from in 1 week, April 13th to April 20th, he did 4 V14s. One of them used to be, or, is maybe a slasher as far as a V15. So, not only did he do 4 V14s, one of them was previously graded V15 when he did it. And then maybe like the week before that, during that same freaking week, he did this other V13 called Offenders of the Faith, which is the sit start to this V9 that is heinous, or at least it was heinous in the heat. He flashed 2 V12s, did this techie the method, which is like this super techie V12 slab, flashed another V11, did another V12. What a week or two. That,
It's
dude, Zach, Jesus, man.
what's really funny is that, so we had dinner, and I knew he was in Squamish because I followed him, and my friends, this guy Brian and Ethan, they were like all hanging out, and it just seemed like a really good vibe. It was cool that they kind of just hung out there, and I was just I don't think there was too much like spray of sending or anything. There was just a lot of vibes. And on one of my last days in Salt Lake, I luckily got to have dinner with some of my friends, and Zach was there, and I congratulated him on the process because I hadn't seen him since. And I was like, "Oh yeah, you went to Squamish? How was Squamish?" Because I knew that it was his first time. I had still not been to Squamish yet in my life, and Josh had been a few times in the past, right?
Yep, twice.
Yeah, nice. And it's, for me, it's like a dream area. I really think it's an area you should go if you're a real climber to test yourself on, because it's just like, seems like it's got so many good test pieces there that are very unique. And so I asked him about his trip and more of that kind of opinion, like, what'd you think about the area, and like, how'd you do? And the way that he had said it, you could kind of tell that for him, and not in an arrogant way, I just didn't get this. He was just like, yeah, just like, you didn't do that much, like spectacular, like hard climbing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know you. Yeah, I didn't hear you do any like V15s plus or anything. But he started showing me. He's like, but dude, I sent like just like such sick lines. He started showing me videos and phone pictures on his phone. I was like, whoa! Like, he did this really cool compression thing called 7, which is like one of the coolest compression lines I've ever seen. And it's V4. That one's V14.
I think it's V14. Yeah.
He did it so quickly. It
Yes.
just looked like amazing. It looked so hard and like looked amazing. And he was like, dude, it's like one of the coolest compression things I've done. And I was like, that is so cool. And that's basically what was our conversation. And then Josh brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, he's kind of a freak. But yeah, shout out Zach. He's a freak.
Yeah, I would argue that is the most impressive 2 weeks in Squamish ever. Maybe the only one who might compare is like Nale might have done something back in the day that was just incredible. But yeah. And he made some comment to me, like I texted him, he was like, yeah, it just, it was kind of like LCC, but a little more powerful and less technical. I was just thinking to myself, man, he thought Squamish wasn't that technical. It just shows how good a climber he is. So just, shout out to Zach. Just, I mean, congrats in the sense of, it sounds like he just had a wonderful trip and probably climbed some amazing things that maybe aren't the most, the biggest number you've ever heard, but those are some amazing climbs, and truly they are extremely difficult. And I'm glad he had, just such a fun couple of weeks out there with Ethan. I think Keenan was out there, and Katie, all people on the pod. And yeah, I don't know. Anyways, just gushing over Zach. Good job, dude.
Imagine what his tick list would look like if he was psyched on his trip. If he was like really proud of his tick list.
I think I saw on one of his stories, maybe it was Ethan Salvo's story. I think he didn't quite do Singularity, which probably would have been a nice little, one to round out the tick list there. Add another V14 or 15 or whatever hard one. So maybe he was just like, didn't even do Singularity.
Yeah. I don't know the name of it. Maybe you know the name of it. He was trying a project. I think it was a project of Ethan's as well. I don't remember. I watched a clip of him like barely doing a move, and I was like, that looks almost impossible. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, that sick line that Ethan posted. I think it's a project.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's a project.
But it's just gorgeous. It looks good. I think Ethan might even, for everyone listening, I'll try a link in the show notes. Ethan Salvo was on the pod and talks about some of, I think that project is just tall, straight. It's that rail, right? Just that perfect kind of rail dihedral to then like a big slap.
That's not what I'm talking about. It was kind of overhung, and there was like some, I think like undercling move and like a big jump out or something. I know it's
so just, I think that's Zazen, the one that used to be V15. Yeah. So that Ethan did that after the break and said, and kind of, I think he kind of proposed V15, wasn't sure because I don't think anyone went and did it. Maybe Luke, I bet you Lucas cheated it. Anyways. All right. Everyone just Zach, Ethan, Keith, I hope you guys release a video of that. Even if it wasn't the biggest grades in the world, I sure would love to see you guys climbing those amazing lines. So, so other sick media that came out. Tim, I watched this video. This guy Sam Elias and spoon speed, and some kid, I don't know, I think
Some
his name,
goofball.
some guy, Tim Kang, I don't know. Did you see that one? What was it called?
Probably not. No, it's yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. It's called Retro Modern. It's a 4-part series sponsored by Black Diamond that yeah, Sam took a bunch of kids out to rebolt some stuff. Yeah, we're totally kidding. I was part of the whole thing. It was really fun. That was, I think I remember sharing it when we were actually doing it during the podcast, because I just thought the whole idea of the project was really fascinating to like bring to life and like kind of educate, but also like bring some awareness to like the idea of bolting. I even got into like a little bit of a comment battle with somebody who was like totally just talking shit, like F that guy. But when BD like posted this reel of this like last episode, he was basically saying like, oh, like, so cool, you guys went out and did like one route. And I was like, it's not really the point was to like go and save a bunch of bolts. It was to like teach us how to rebolt, and using a classic route's really cool. But I was like, I get it. Like, I mean, yeah, you think that it's our job or something to go and rebolt things for you. But that's the point, is like, dude, no one who's like bolted stuff has gotten paid for it, right? Like they spend their money to go and bolt. So if you go out and climb on bolts, you should just say thank you, like not like, oh God, these pro climbers like not bolting and not keeping our crags safe and stuff. It's like, no, man, it's usually people who aren't pro climbers. It's usually people who spend their money to like who just out of their hearts want to bolt things so that they can climb them, right? And then it just so happens that other people can climb on bolted lines. But the point for me was that like, okay, a lot of these bolts maybe in the past weren't so good. They weren't so like safe. Maybe not everybody knew how to do them. And so over time, they're gonna break and people are gonna get hurt. So as we learn that over time, and our generation, I can just speak for our generation, very few people know how to bolt. Very few people even know at all what the process is to get into bolting, or like what it's like. And it is intimidating, man. Like for me, at least, like it was very intimidating. I was very lucky to have a good mentor and like to understand and be able to ask questions. But, because it's intimidating, how can you expect people from my generation to like get into it, right? It's kind of like an old guard type feel that like the people who bolt are like the police of the crag,
I mean, you literally need someone to teach you. Like that's like you literally need to pass that torch to say, this is how you safely place a bolt. I've never bolted. And anyone who complains or says any of that stuff, it's just the most naive and lack of appreciation for people who put in tons of work to create climbs that we love. And also we've talked about this a little bit before with some guests, is it's there's more art there than you realize. Bouldering especially is maybe a little simpler. I don't want to take anything away from developing boulders, but in sport climbing, there's a lot more work, and like they're the ones choosing the lines, and they're the ones keeping you safe. And by the way, one of the reasons why things need to be rebolted, Tim, is because back in the day, people had no money and they used cheaper gear. They just did. Exactly. So thanks for going out and doing that. And I hope you use that skill to go and bolt some FAs of your own. And I would encourage people to donate to the Access Fund, which if you're going to not ever rebolt, then add a couple of bucks to the climbing world that they spend a lot of money. Well, they spend a lot of money on helping us keep access to areas that we love, but they also spend a lot of money on buying gear for people to make things safe again or make the next climb safe. So thanks for doing that, Tim. I really dug it too. I thought it was a great little
nice clip. Yeah, I thought it was super fun just to like have a different totally different outlook on climbing media or climbing films. And like, I mean, we tried to climb hard and stuff, but it wasn't the emphasis of the film. So it was cool. It was funny because towards the end of it, I couldn't send the Big Smile. So the Big Smile is like this amazing kind of short bouldery 14B in the Narrows in Salt Lake. And I had like, this is my excuse. I had session Grand Illusion for like a couple hours, like the day before I went out with them. And it just so happened that the crux holds were like very similar. But, I knew that the point wasn't to go and send the Big Smile. I just got psyched and I was like, dang it. Like, I wish I was fresh to send this thing. I got very close over the course of like, I don't know, a couple of tries in like a day and a half of shooting it. And it was just cool to like hear them talk about the story, spend some time, rebolting it and just like get psyched. And it just so happened that, so Sam's shot the series, and he had a couple other climbers. I think Colin was one of them. Noah Keithley was one of them. I think he did Morgan, who's a setter at the Bouldering Project. And apparently none of us sent the climbs that we were supposed to do. We all got very close, and Sam was the only one who sent his thing and his part, I think. And so it just like makes it cool where I think I want to remove the emphasis from like sending. I think that was like a really cool aspect. And not to say that climbing films shouldn't have that. I think that should be like a primary emphasis of a lot of climbing films. Of course, like people go on project and pour their whole stories into it, and that's what people want to share. But to just change that and put a new perspective on like what we should focus on, I thought was like awesome. And so, yeah, hopefully people liked it. It was fun.
I did. I thought it was funny how they called out, like, Tim hasn't actually done that many 514s. And we were talking about this. Did you tell me that you've only done 2 514s and one was a flash and one was a 14D? Is that your sport climbing?
That's my resume.
That's freaking hilarious.
My resume is Bad Girls Club, which is a 14D. It took me 4 years, and then I flashed Rodeo for Europe and Lander like 2 years ago. That's 14A.
Right. Well, that'll change this year, as now that you're in a more sport climbing access area. I hope to see you on tying onto a rope, and maybe I can join you. But cool video, and another freaking sick video that dropped this week. My hunches is everyone listening has seen it. It's Tropical Lines, dude, by Felipe Camargo. Just so good, man. I mean, it's good for a whole bunch of reasons, but I think why it's making the waves that it is, it's just unique, or unique in this way that it felt like something very different from everything else I've seen before in the last year, or the last 5 years. The music was different and awesome. The cuts were different. The whole editing was different. The scenery was different. The lines were different, and the rock was different. And I don't know. And it was all these different locations where it really showcased the different kinds of climbing available in Brazil. Oh yeah. And it's in Brazil, which I feel like South America probably pretty untapped. And so I just loved the film, dude. Just loved it.
Yeah. I wanted to let you just, take the mic on that. Cause I just watched it, right before we recorded, and, it's immediately I was like, oh, this is going to be my favorite. I think this is going to be my favorite sport climbing film. And that's a high bar because, maybe there aren't too many films about sport climbing, but some of my favorite moments of media in sport climbing are like a lot of Sharma, a lot of Andra, a lot of Alex Megos type stuff. And it's hard to beat like good footage. Like Fight Club of Megos is like one of my favorite, short clips of sport climbing to watch. Biography and Dreamcatcher.
Like I'm glad you.
Yeah. Wadura Dura. Like those are some of the coolest. Dreamcatcher was one of my first that I watched and like got psyched on. And for whatever reason, it was hard to kind of understand exactly why those were so cool, like other than just the characters. But watching this film like really opened my eyes. It was specifically, and I just sent a picture to Felipe Camargo, who's the athlete in that film, and I was like, bro, this is like my favorite. And I don't know him, but we were just like kind of going back and forth on it. And he said, sport climbing, this is a quote from him. He said, sport climbing is a slow sport. It's challenging to try to bring skate/surf film vibes with such a slow sport. I said, agreed. And I said, I feel like the showcasing of emotion was so good here, though. I said, that's why I like skate films so much, is showing emotion in the failure and in the success. And I said the first route on that double knee bar towards the top on, I think it's called Cavallo de Troia. And this was where I knew this was my favorite film. He gets into the knee bar, and in the beginning, it is just like cool vibes, cool music, like really sick rock, like really cool lines right away. You're just like, wow, so sick. And he's just doing like, nice flowy moves. It's got good footage. You can see the holds, you can see the moves. They changed the angle a bunch of times, so you can see the difficulty as well, which is rare. Sport climbing is hard to understand because you got to know the beta. Like you kind of have to know which parts are difficult. Why? Like what does the texture of the rock feel like? Because otherwise it just looks like a bunch of moves. But they did a really good job capturing all of that. He gets to this double knee bar and it starts to blur. Like the perspective of the film starts to blur and you start seeing all of his previous failures. And I was like, oh, that is exactly what it feels like. I hate long rests. I hate long rests on sport climbs because you just like remember all of the failure. And it was like constant. He was like on there, just like back. And you could see him close his eyes and it just starts to like shake. The screen shakes and blurs. And he's got a movie falls on and a movie falls on and a movie falls on the same route. And it's like, oh, that's like so genius to share it that way. And there are a lot of moments like that where it jumped back and forth between success and failure and kind of like the different emotion. And that's what I was talking about. And hopefully he kind of got that I appreciated that. And hopefully, like, it's hard to share like what you appreciate about films, but that was for me, like, it's hard to share what sport climbing is actually like. And so it's hard to show how impressive it actually is. And sport climbing for a lot of people, like, and we avoid it because it's a long process. It's slow. It takes a ton of work. And so when people get psyched and show a good film like that, it is sick. And one other thing, there was a couple of climbs in that film, and they're all like roughly 9A, plus or minus a grade. And they were all different styles, like completely different styles, like different rock, different angles, and like different hold types, different difficulties. I thought that was so badass. So sick.
I think I like that you called out that they really managed to communicate how difficult these climbs were. There's some section, I can't remember the name of the line. It was that one that they called a, just like a long moonboard climb or something. Yeah. And it looked heinous. It looked so hard. I thought it was cool when he showed that Gaston move. There's like this side pull to a Gaston, and he was talking about how it was tempting to really pull in and get that Gaston close to his body, but then that was the wrong beta, and like sagging out was better. And just the hold looked so bad. And then when he did that climb too, it was just by the skin of his teeth, man. It just, I didn't realize until you said that, but that was what I really enjoyed about it, is that we don't often capture the difficulty of sport climbing, not just the individual moves, but maybe it was like how emotive he was too during it. You just felt the actual limit difficulty. And I love that.
You mentioned also that Tom Bolger was like a part when we talked on the phone, and like that's huge, man. To like time, I had a struggle with this when I was making Focus. Was we talked about this a lot with like Brennan and Bobby, like how do we educate the viewer on how things are difficult? And I was like, I mean, I have no idea, like good luck with that. And honestly, it was a big bummer of mine that like it's very hard to understand how difficult or scary these things feel because I don't have an expert explaining it. Why am I supposed to explain that in my film about my thing? Like Felipe can't really do that, right? He can show you what he's thinking, and like that's really cool. But then having Tom like pull on and literally just a short section of him just being like, "Yep, that's hard," and then also all the locals who like do all the time bolting and like saying like, "Yeah, that's hard," like that's super hard, and yeah, you can see the grade 9A, but like it's each movement and each section and like each style, and also Felipe's style of climbing, I feel like was it's something that I try to emulate in my climbing, which is like a lot of flow, but just like hatred, like on each hold, just anger, just like grab the hold, get it done. Like hopefully, Josh, you kind of mentioned that when we climbed at tension together, where if I go for a hold, I'm trying to stick it, by any means necessary. And to see that mixed with flow was like super cool. And these routes did a really good, and that's why I like sport climbing so much too, because you get a bit of both. Like if you want to climb hard sport routes, you have to be a good boulderer, very aggressive, and just have that anger in how you grab holds. And then you got to have efficiency and flow. And just to see that go back and forth was so sick. But education for how difficult things are is super important.
You're right. I did like seeing Tom there. And it was funny how he did that move where I don't think Felipe used it as a mono, but Tom is just this pocket beast, dude. And you just see him like hook this mono. When you like see a mono that's heinous and like the back of the hand, it looks weird. You're like, dude, what are you doing only holding on to that hold with one finger? That's a bad call. And then, does this heinous, like as the finish move. And he's like, oh yeah, that's hard. You're talking about sport climbing and being able to bring that kind of bouldering intensity. And I will say it's something that I still struggle with. I don't think I've reached my bouldering grade compared to my sport climbing grade is much different. And even when I do sport climb now, and I haven't been sport climb much recently, so I'm hoping to change that soon. I get good at the flow and I can kind of like cruise, but I have a hard time bringing the same intensity to the moves. And it's not even just the intensity. It's almost like the body position where I kind of lope my way up, 512, 513. And actually I shouldn't even say the grade doesn't, I guess my point is like those grades don't require these like super precise, like I mean, you know, when you boulder and you're doing a really hard move, sometimes it just asks you to enter into this mode that is a little different than kind of this loose, flowy stuff too. And I have a really hard time. I don't know if I've ever successfully pulled an extremely hard move or especially two moves together on a rope. And so, yeah, a lot of respect for seeing him just do limit heinous moves, way off the deck, and with the quick draw, like banging him in the head and stuff too. Dude, such a good film. Great job.
Yeah. So good.
Oh, I just want to call it because we said something about Dreamcatcher and Chris Sharma doing Dreamcatcher. We were talking to Dave Burleson about this film, and who he was involved in it too, right? Wasn't he? Didn't he help?
Produced it.
He produced it. Amazing. Yeah. Good job, Dave. And we were talking about films that were really iconic for us in the past. And we were like, oh, Chris on Dreamcatcher, like never forget that. So hopefully, I think that Dave, Felipe, you guys at least put your hat in the ring for a film that people are going to come back to years and years later and just be psyched on.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched it, seriously go watch it. Like, it's just, there is not a lot of climbing media or like films that I would happily say, like, if you're a climber, you absolutely need to watch it. I think there's, like, back in the day, every film was like that. Like, if you hadn't watched Dosage back in the day, like, what are you doing? Like, you learn so much, you get so psyched. But this one's one of those climbing films where I feel like, yeah, and it's just like you're totally right. Like, there's not that much on South America, so like getting a whole new, like, I feel like I know what a lot of the rock looks like in a lot of the world. And so that was kind of the first time I really got to see it in action with hard climbing. And I was like, damn, I'm like psyched. I want to go there. One other piece of news really quickly, not that I've watched it yet because it's not out yet, but the gold standard is coming out this weekend. And that would be the weekend of the 18th, 19th. That's Keenan's film, the V15 that he did in Bishop. And I just saw this morning a bunch of like advertisements for it. And like, I was literally about to go and watch it. And I saw that it was like coming out in a couple of days. I was like, no, like, I got to watch this. I think that's going to be one of the sicker Bishop films of all time.
Sweet. I did not even know he had teased that. I'm psyched. So what cool. A freaking line. This past winter, Devolution getting done, Gold Standard. These are just climbs right in the main area of maybe the most popular bouldering destination in America. And there's still amazing lines getting done. Right. These are king lines. Way to go, Keenan. I know how psyched he was on that too. Okay, yeah. Cool.
Well, the little like 30-second thing that I saw on his story, I think was, or on a reel, it was like similar to what we're obsessed about in this Tropical Lines thing, which is like this whole process and the communication. Just seeing him like obsess over each detail, like, how he's falling, like how he's psyched when he gets a link. I was like, it's not just him doing a new V15. It is not. And it's not just a sick line, and it's not just a classic area. It's his approach and his process on this was so cool just to see on a reel. It got me so excited to watch this film. So shout out. Go watch it this weekend, or it'll already be out by the time you guys listen to this. So go watch it. It seems amazing. I can't wait to watch it.
Me too. That's awesome, man. Glad you shouted that out. God, what a week for media. Jeez.
Yeah.
And a Testpiece podcast. Quick break while I tell you about today's sponsor. Thank you to all the patrons who help make this show possible. Join them so you can get episodes early before anyone else, and those episodes are ad-free. As a patron, you also get to submit questions for upcoming guests. The answers to those questions are only available to patrons. Follow the link in the show notes to join now. You also get access to a private Discord where you'll find me and other people who want to go from good to great. Okay, back to the pod. All right, Tim, going to do a few announcements as we transition out of the amazing week that the media just lined up for our number 100. Tim, by the time this comes out, you'll have done 2 classrooms for the month of May. And yeah, I said 2 because, Tim, you are now doing 2 classrooms a month, and they'll be probably a little more spaced out than they were this month. But I love that you've stepped up a notch. And now, Tim, you have your own Patreon. So people who want to do these classrooms, I'll still show up with, like I said, a glass of wine in hand, and Tim's the one driving these. So if you want to join the classrooms now, go to patreon.com Tim Testpiece. And yeah, Tim's doing 2 a month now. So go check those out. The recordings from these will still be on the Testpiece patron page. So don't worry if you aren't making them, or you just want to kind of get a little teaser on what they might be like. You can sign up for the Testpiece Patreon. You'll still get the recordings. But Tim, maybe can you tease any questions you have coming up, just so people kind of get a taste of what the classrooms are like?
Yeah. So I don't have any questions for the upcoming classrooms yet. I think people sometimes send them, or sometimes I'll just like reach out and if I want some questions. But what we are doing to try this time is one of our longtime classroom members, Andrew. He's sending in a couple of videos, and so all of my coaching in the past has always been video analysis. So it's usually live video where I record and then I just like kind of show you, what I'm looking at. But sometimes I can just like look at a video and tell you a lot of things that I see. And I find that that's the most effective coaching that people can get for rock climbing, and maybe understand a little bit more of their decision making and what they should fix. And so what I wanted to try was like more live feedback, back and forth, have some questions, have people give thoughts. And historically, what we do in the classrooms, and we basically just do a live podcast there and just like go into these topics. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to go back and forth with the guests. And so if it's an environment that sounds like that's something you would want to do, absolutely join in there. I'm doing 2 classrooms a month because I know we got some requests to do at a different time, because we usually just do them at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm going to do one a month at noon Pacific Standard Time and one a month at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so if you can only join one, you can just join one. If you, regardless, it's, you just go on the Patreon. It's $25 a month to join there. It's a steal for what you're kind of getting out of that. But it also, if you want to join both, you can just absolutely join both. It's a great way to support me. It's something that I love doing, but honestly, it's a great way to support me because I don't coach anymore. At least I don't offer one-on-one AMAs as much anymore. And that's because I think it's more useful to just like, I end up repeating myself a lot in a lot of the coaching sessions. And so I just wanted to have an environment where I can just like spray a lot of like, honestly, basic fundamentals that we forget all the time that are totally applicable in every attempt that we have. And I just wanted an environment where we could all share that and remind ourselves and just have better sessions,
To me, it's the best of all worlds because you are getting a direct one-on-one AMA coaching experience with Tim, and you're getting other people's one-on-one coaching experience with Tim and seeing, because often you have more than one question, of course, and it's all connected and we all have similar problems. And then on top of that, you also get access to a community that is sharing and helpful. And that's what climbing's really like. So it's really, Tim, I know you've maybe still occasionally do one-off AMAs, and I do as well, but I in general point people towards the classrooms because and the podcast itself, because I think it's the best of all worlds. And if you can't make those, Tim, you should put the recordings on yours as well. So make sure that you get those recordings up.
Sure.
And my other, go ahead. Don't want to cut you off.
You were saying something about the community, which I just want to say that no matter what level climber you are, this is a place for you. We have people from all ranges of expertise in there. And that's one of my favorite things is that the questions seem relevant for everybody and the discussions seem relevant for everybody. We talk about from injury prevention to like, PT to like technical strategies to like training type things. We talk about it all. And it seems to be just a fun discussion for everybody. And I learn a lot too.
I'm pretty sure on the last, maybe not the last class, but the one before, I think we had people from probably around V3 to V13.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, one of the ones I was thinking about as a cool topic that got addressed was we had someone send in a video where they were struggling on a slopey foot and it was high up and they just couldn't get weight on it. And, it was on the lower end of the grade range, but all the same lessons applied. And then he came back to us later and talked about going outside and applying some of those lessons, and that worked like a charm. And honestly, it works like a charm for V13 too. It's reminding ourselves, so seeing someone struggle, whatever the grade may be. And that's why I do like the video analysis, Tim. I think that's a really good call. I'm glad you're opening it up for that more, because I think we've had some really good results from that. And you get to literally tackle the exact problem. And then when they come back and explain how that advice worked for them, I think it's really satisfying helping someone like that. And I'm sure that's why you love it so much, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was saying to Josh also, like, not everybody knows how to ask the right questions, but honestly, if you just present a problem, we can find the right questions, right? So it's way more effective.
Or like that's why like the video, it's like you think you know what your issue is, and I actually I don't want to use any specifics, but that is a classic thing where people say, "Hey, how come this isn't working here?" And you're like, "Oh, well, it was the move before. That's why it wasn't working. It has nothing to do with that move." And the last thing I'll say, Tim, I now have the design for a Testpiece t-shirt, and there'll be, and there'll be sweaters maybe or tank tops, but I have the Testpiece t-shirt. I haven't done a full run. If you're interested in one, please email hi@testpiececlimbing.com or DM me on Instagram. And also, if you're a member of Patreon, you get the recordings of the classrooms, but you're also going to get a discount on the t-shirt. So win-win. And Tim, yours is in the mail. Well, it's not in the mail yet. It will be in the mail. Yeah.
Nice. Let's go.
Whoever is signed up for Tim's classrooms will, of course, get a discount as well. And that's all I got, Tim. Those are the big announcements for the week.
Nice. All right, man. See ya.
Wait. Not only do I have a pro tip, I finally brought a pro tip, but also our topic of the day is juicy. My pro tip is maybe basic, Tim, maybe obvious, but super important. It has to do with friction. So I have said many a time that I struggle with really, really small holds. And I'm not alone, of course. But I think what always irked me and caused me some confusion is that objectively, my finger strength is pretty darn good. But then when I got onto really small micros, I would struggle in a disproportionate way. So, if you looked at my 15 mil numbers, you would think that I would do well on 8 mil to whatever percentage compared to others. And I would not. And so I was like, geez, Josh, you suck. What's wrong with you? Finger morphology, pointing, who knows what's wrong? But I get really upset. So I had an experience a few days ago where I've actually been kind of taking time off. I just was a little burnt, and I ate a little extra food. I got a little soft. And so you would think on the hangboard, that those added extra pounds might hurt me. And of course they hurt me a little bit, and it's getting hotter out. So my hangboard is a little, my garage is a little warm. So I decided to anti-hydral. I'm like, oh, and I haven't anti-hydraled a ton. Actually, first found out about it in Squamish one summer where I was greasing off everything. I thought, wow, this stuff really works. And full disclosure, Tim, I'm a sweaty guy. I sweat a little bit. And here's one of the ways you can tell if you're also a sweatier climber, because it's not always clear. It's not like I'm sweaty in the sense that, I don't know, like you would know I'm sweaty, but I've never gotten a split while climbing. And splits happen when your skin is dried out, cracks, and now you have this opening that's painful, or so I'm told. I've never actually had one. And when you sweat, your skin doesn't really dry off. So I always kind of roll off holds, and my skin kind of gets sloughed off or just rubbed off. And so I do some anti-hydral. I go into my garage. It's warmer than normal. I get on my kind of normal small crimp thing to do a little hangboard session, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm able to really have a session where my fingers got tired from the hold, where what I've experienced in the past is I'll do 30 seconds on an 8 mil. And it's like the middle of winter. It's like 42 degrees in my garage, and I just stick to it. It feels good. And then I'll go on another day. It'll be hot, and I literally will only get 2 seconds. Like I feel like I can't even get on there. And so it was hot in my garage, but I had anti-hydraled, and I stuck like a charm and PR'd my thing. And I'm even extra heavy. I just thought to myself, God, am I just an idiot? Has it just always been friction and had nothing to do with finger strength? So pro tip is friction matters. Understand your skin, understand the weather, understand anti-hydral. We all know this, but I think it's ratcheted up another level of importance in my mind. And so I wanted to share that experience I had.
Nice. That's super cool. Yeah, it was fun to have this discussion a little bit yesterday as well. And I also like that your pro tip isn't use anti-hydral to crimp. Like I like that that's not the pro tip. It's understand your skin and understand friction and understand like why you might not be getting the most access to the power that you probably already have. Because I have a really similar sentiment in terms of like if the holds get smaller and sharper, I generally more often will lose all access to my power. Like I'll have many sessions where I like try to hang on the 8 mil and I just roll straight off. I'm like, pretty sure I can hang 8 millimeters or like I'm strong enough to, but it's not showing me that. And I would get a lot of frustration when I was younger as well. But it didn't bother me because I was really good at slopers and like really good at pinches and like felt really comfortable gaining friction there. And it just so happens that, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a climber who is really good at slopers, pinches, and crimps, small edges, no matter what your skin does. But I would say that often you'll see if you're better at slopers and pinches, you're going to be worse at this other thing. And, if you're better at thinner crimps, sharper crimps, you're probably going to be not so comfortable on these like slopers. And that's because the skin kind of just works that way. And so the way that I've seen it is I've never, ever used antihydral for personal reasons. I just feel like I don't want to change my skin, like unless it's natural. And but my skin has changed a ton. Like,
are you calling me a cheater, Josh, Tim? Are you calling me a cheater?
No, I'm not calling you a cheater, man.
Okay, go on. Sorry, just wanted to be like, dude, just say it. If you're gonna say it, just say it.
No, plenty of people use antihydral. I actually think it's very smart if you don't care about that part of your skin where you're not so scared about it, like changing long term. I have no idea. I just don't want to do that. But I know lots of people who do it, and it's obviously very effective if you're trying to train smaller crimps or like you need it to be effective there. And sometimes I did need that, except I never needed it when I needed it. And that's what I'm trying to explain. If I go to Bishop, my skin dries up. If I'm in an area where it's not so dry in the environment, my skin stays pretty sweaty. And so I travel so much that my skin just changes for periods of time. And I've learned because I've traveled so much that it usually is a couple of weeks where my skin will stay that way for a while. And what I took from that pro tip was when my skin is dry. So for example, I just went to Salt Lake for a couple of weeks and I came back to Vegas, and the last like 3 sessions, I've just dry fired off every slopey hold. But the crimps feel really good because my skin just doesn't sweat. It does not. And luckily I haven't split yet because I haven't done too much volume on it, but I certainly will if I grab something a little bit too sharp. And yeah, my skin's just in a state right now, and I'll almost guarantee you that in a week it won't be that way. It'll just start getting softer. I'm going to start sweating a little bit more. So what do I want to do during that time? I'm going to start grabbing some smaller edges because I probably wouldn't be able to unless I antihydral when my skin was soft. But because my skin is dry right now and the crimps feel a lot better, and instead of like, I was kind of complaining on the slopey problem I was trying and like unable to do. Why am I doing that? Why don't I just like try that problem, have fun on it, but train the crimps because I wouldn't be able to grab them otherwise. And so that's kind of what I'm going to do with it. It'd be fun to hear other people's experience with skin and friction. Everyone's a little bit different, but yeah, friction matters. Skin matters a lot.
I mean, we all do talk about skin a lot when you're on that trip and you're trying to skin farm, build up that skin. But I just think I don't give it enough credit. I often just tell myself no excuses, try harder. It doesn't matter. But I also know that when I'm in Bishop a long time, Bishop is the best example for me, also because I've spent the most time there. So that helps, where a problem will feel entirely different day 1 of the season to, day 15, when you've had multiple weeks of showing up. And the classic example for me is there will be these crystals in these crimps, and they will bite into your skin. And when you have a big callus, you can literally grab it and look at your finger after you weight it. You'll have a giant dent in your finger. But when you have that callus and it's a dent, the friction, the way it's digging into you, and I always say it's grabbing you. All of a sudden, instead of you being like, I can't hold on to this little crystal, it feels like painful and slippery. It's like, no, it's you kind of like get locked together. And so it matters. And this is something I've struggled with as I've tried to move up in the grades, is I'm so tempted to just try hard, Tim. And I mean, we go back and forth about this of like, no excuses, but then be realistic. And it's something that I've always wanted to just be like, you need to just try harder, Josh. But there does come a point, and it's naive or stupid for me to not really consider conditions. And I would never say that. Like, don't worry about conditions. You should just go try buttermilker in June. Wait, isn't that when Sharma did it? I think he did.
What?
I think I do. I could be wrong. We got to look up the lore, but I kind of want to say like Buttermilker was done in the middle of summer. Anyway, so that was the opposite of the example. Just goes to show how strong Chris is. So, pay attention to these details. The pros are, they are, and care about everything. Don't let that get in the way of your fun. But I think I just all of a sudden got reminded of how important my skin condition is for performance. And so that was my pro tip, Tim.
Nice. I have a pro tip. It's a little bit of a different gear, and I might as well just drop it now because I don't think it'll be exactly relevant later. My pro tip is, I'll explain it, but my pro tip is do what you want. And I think a lot of people, we've had this discussion so many times back and forth on the side of training and like, is a training plan important? Like, what's the guidance towards, like, are you projecting? Are you going to follow your workout plans? Like, actually, yes. I think the way that I've always phrased my training is like whenever I would go on a flight or like have time after school or like, whatever rest days or whatever, I would just plan out my year. I'd plan out my days, plan out my weeks, and just be like, cool, likely if I want to get to this level of strength by the end of the year, I'll try to do this stuff. And as you learn more and get more educated, you work with experts in like science, you understand frequencies, cycles, you understand that stuff. Great. Implement that into your training plans as well. But I think it's good to have a plan. I think it's good to like understand where you're trying to get, fill in your curriculum with stuff that you think is probably going to get you there. That's a really good basis to have. And once you have that basis, I would say try to follow it. But as soon as you feel yourself unpsyched, as soon as you feel yourself second guessing the training, do what you want instead. And I think that's where like Sean Bailey came on the podcast and kind of talked about his training and like his philosophy on training is really like there. I don't think a real plan works. I just like do my best kind of every day and like meet myself. And I don't think that's exactly what he says, but I hear this a lot from pro climbers is that this part actually kind of ties into our topic for the day as well. And I don't disagree with that. I really don't think that obviously a lot of climbers get to an extremely high level without training plans. But what they are doing is they're trying really hard. Like they're doing what they're doing in their actual days. If you just put it on paper, it probably would amount to a pretty decent training plan, So it's like, obviously they're getting the right amount of stimulus. And so once you understand the stimulus that you would want to have, I would say, and maybe that's why it works so well for them, because they're having fun all the time. They're able to do what they want to do and what they believe in. And they're working on that aspect of performance, which is a really difficult thing to unlock. If you rely on all the training that you're doing and you expect that to entitle you to performance, that's where it gets all missing. I've heard that so many times. I've seen examples of it too many times where people were like, dude, I've done the work. I've done the training. I can do one-arm pull-ups. I can grab this grip. Why can I not do this move? It's like, that's a damn good question. Why can't you do the move? And you really should just be answering that. Why can't you do the move? And that starts to open up all these doors for what kind of thing might be fun for you, what's not so fun. And you start to work your habits and like, things that you bias and whatever. But that's my general pro tip is even if you don't have a training plan, probably better for you to enjoy climbing and have longevity in the sport to just do what you want. And hopefully it's guided towards things that are helpful for you, but do what you want.
Okay. I'll do what I want, Tim, wherever I want.
All right.
I like that you connected some of the fun with success there. I really want to say that whole sense of entitlement that people get from training, that is just setting yourself up for disappointment always. Because training never translates perfectly and your training might have been really successful, but you happen to be on a different move and now you feel entitled, even if your training was successful, it didn't apply to that one little thing that you're doing now. And now you're going to be bummed and disheartened, and that's ridiculous. So I thought that was a really key little thing there. And I also think that having fun is the best way to have longevity in training. And it made me think of your description of the new Moonboard set and getting to start on jugs. And yes, you can start on some heinous one-hand crimp and you can say this is good for training, but you're going to find that you'll go back and put more effort into training when it's fun for you. The one caveat there that I will say, Tim, is that there's an element of telling yourself to enjoy the thing that is good for you. And I will, like when I'll first start a new discipline, maybe it's sport climbing. I don't know. You didn't have to twist my arm to start sport climbing. Let's do a hypothetical then. Maybe like you're scared. Maybe you have no endurance. try to reframe it as fun. So when you start doing training that you know is good for you, but maybe you have a little trepidation around it, I think you can kind of trick yourself into having fun. And I started actually, a good example is I wasn't psyched on the hangboard. I'm still not like incredibly psyched on the hangboard. I'll tell you what, once I got the ball rolling and I kind of made a little game out of it, it was fun. And as a result, I stuck with it. So there's some nuance there, but I think fun is a really good core concept there.
I agree with that stuff so much. When I was younger, I was so against training. I actually really was when I was younger, and I climbed pretty hard, like right away. In a couple of years, I was climbing double digits, and like I knew for a fact that like I was very like Dave Graham thought oriented, at least in my mind. And Adam Andre also just like so skinny, but like weak looking, but just climbed so hard. And I was like, yeah, like kind of wanted to lean into that. And I was honestly kind of against training. And then like my coach, I remember, explained some concept to me that convinced me to just do something. And then I was like, all right, yeah, I'll just try it, And as I did it, I learned what new fun things were because I had an open mind. And so like honestly, there are a lot of things that are fun, and our bias and our predisposition to like dislike certain things is probably what takes away a lot of the fun. And so if you just try a lot of stuff and are open-minded, you'll probably see a lot of fun. It helps to do what Josh said, where you like kind of approach it with like, nah, it's probably going to be fun if I just like allow myself to have fun, or just shift your perspective a little bit before you even start trying. That'll help a lot. But honestly, if you guys just go for it and like, start leaning towards what you want, be a little bit open-minded, and line that up to where you want to become. That's like the biggest thing for me. It's like, well, what do you want to be at the end of the day? Like at the end of the year, who do you want to be? And, mixing those two lines of like, well, what's fun today? Where do you want to be? And constantly trying to align those two things. I think that's the best way for longevity and progression.
Tim, this was a good lead in to the topic of the day, because we'll touch on training a little bit.
Nice.
Well, let me set the stage a little bit. This one came out from the last pod you were on, Tim, where you talked about your experience in Salt Lake City. You were visiting Salt Lake City, and you were there watching two comps, NACS and the World Cup. And you watched them at least on the live stream because tickets were so expensive. But if you want more details than that, go to the last pod. And you also got the chance to climb with the best in the world. I know maybe you weren't exactly sessioning with them, as in you and Serato were just hugging it out and climbing on the same boulders, but you were there with them participating in the room and climbing on similar stuff. And you came on here and you shared what you saw and felt from that experience. And I think the one that really stuck with me and was actually the title of that pod was "Your Heroes Are Human." And what you said right after that is that they were doing the simple thing over and over and over again. And there's more to this, so I won't just, let me kind of simplify it down to that, but just beg the question, what exactly is that simple thing? We talked a little bit about, but I think it deserves going into a little more deeply. And I think it really does encompass what you've been explaining over your whole life, over your whole career. Yeah. And I'm going to summarize kind of what I understood from it, and then you're going to tell me how wrong I am and be more clear with your words. But when I thought about what the simple thing was that you were trying to communicate and what these quote unquote heroes are doing day in, day out for decades to become the best climbers in the world, is simply that you should really focus on climbing the moves in front of you as best as possible, over and over again. And what best as possible really means is using the appropriate method, i.e., not having a ton of bias towards your strengths or your preferred method, really trying to search out what's optimal and not get sucked into what you want or are better at. And yeah, Tim, I'm just going to put a period there and see where I got that wrong, or if I'm kind of on the right track.
No, that's totally what I meant when I was trying to explain it. And this is a very difficult topic, but I do think that if we can understand this as a community or just like personally, we'll understand our ability to progress in a sport that's as difficult as rock climbing. For me, it's very difficult. Like I was watching Serato and I was like, man, this kid just got it. Like, I mean, he's young, dude. Like, and for him to be at that place, at that level, showed to me, I don't know, people just like, I don't like the word I mean, obviously I have heroes, I just don't like it as like when people say it and just like shove them away like they're not human. That's kind of what I meant, where it's like, oh, that guy, he's just genetically freak. That guy, he's just so talented. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, because there could be certain, I just look at things kind of logically, like there are some factors that might make certain things easier for them, but you're saying that alone was what got him to the level of where he is? Like, absolutely not. I watched him and I was like, wow, the things that I've been trying to do my whole life were very natural for him. So that's the thing that I saw. The frequency of how often he was probably correct for the appropriate sequences, the appropriate beta, the appropriate body positions, and the appropriate way to grab holds seemed really accurate almost all the time. The frequency of him doing the quote unquote right thing or the best thing seemed to be really good. It also seemed to, he seemed to believe in it, which is for me kind of difficult. Like even if I know the right thing, the right sequence, if it's really difficult, like it's at a high intensity of my physical output, I start to doubt it, because it's just like, I start to bring in all these feelings of doubt. And not to say that he doesn't feel those things, it just didn't seem that way, right? And then when it came to how quickly he's making those decisions, so his belief into it, the frequency of him choosing the right thing, and then just commitment was just so good, like every time. And not to say that I didn't see him make mistakes. Absolutely could see him make a lot of mistakes in certain scenarios, but also just like how he fell, like what he would walk away, like his attitude, all of it, the whole range, the whole spectrum of how he digested information, how he decided to act on that information constantly, over and over again, seemed simple, man. It seemed really simple. And I was like, why don't I do that myself? And that's kind of where it gets really tricky. And that's kind of why you're bringing up that bias issue, which is, in my opinion, that's where, so I think you explained it really well, but the reason why people may not see the sensitivity there is like, well, what happens when you are really biased? And I kind of explained the way that I think a lot of Americans view climbing, at least the people that I've competed with my whole life or like seen, in action. Just I don't see that many Europeans or like, other Asian climbers or people from other countries, because I do think that's a corollary. I think culture and like how you digest things and like how you approach things is based on your culture. It's based on your approach. The way that I viewed a lot of the American approach is like, I want to be a good climber. And so I'm going to go to the gym and work on myself as a climber. And all the time, like these are the strengths. And this is how I train for sure. It's an aspect of that's guided my training for a long time, at least in the strength realm, is like, pull-ups. I see a lot of pull-ups in climbing. I got to go do some pull-ups. And again, I'm going to stop right here and say, not to say that is not effective. It just might not be the most clean approach to using that strength, right? And that's where this is going to get a little bit complicated. But I always did that. I always did this like, yeah, pull-ups probably get me stronger at climbing, right? So because I see pull-ups all the time in climbing, and imagine that in all other aspects. Like, oh yeah, crimping. I see so much crimping in climbing. I might as well just become a god of crimping. And you'll see that. You'll see people who just become gods, essentially, of what they're really good at. That's not the same thing as looking at a climb and understanding what you need to be really good at, specifically for that challenge, specifically for those types of things, generalizing that concept, and then getting really good at that, working on that over time, trusting it, identifying it in scenarios, whether you're trying a project, whether you're trying a new climb, whether you're trying a competition, being able to lean in, commit to it, and just go for it. Mind you that competitions are really quick. Like you just don't have time to solve. You don't have time to work on things, right? So you have to be good at that skill of identifying, committing, and like knowing the right thing to do. And that's the person who's going to win the competition. And so that's kind of the way I understood just climbing as a whole. It just like, it was an epiphany watching Serato in person. And I was like, wow, like the way that we view our metrics and our attributes that determine us as strong climbers, I think literally that, how we get there and how we rely on that throughout our performance, throughout our training, is maybe what amounts to how good we can be and how much we trust it, right? And watching this kid, this younger guy, I was like, wow, he really did it the right way.
God, it's interesting. And I hear what you're saying, where it's so tempting. I don't know if it's just Americans. I'll give that to you. I'm not totally sure. Where just focusing on attributes and breaking the thing into parts instead of dealing with it as a whole. And it's this thing where you should train your fingers so that you have strong fingers for climbing. And that's like the kind of the backwards thing. And I think that the way that you
described it to me that I thought was really interesting is that you could literally take someone with the best attributes, and I'm not going to get into what attributes those are. We'll say fingers, like body strength. I don't know. Just pick your attribute, because you could talk about a million different attributes like calf strength. I don't care. That does not guarantee success on a boulder or on a climb.
But what I said was, imagine that guy had never climbed before.
He
had never climbed before, but he had all these like physical attributes that we would all agree in a climbing community. What we understand is like, that's ideal for really strong climbing. He's capable of climbing hard stuff. We can all agree that we would expect that person to pull on a pretty difficult climb and probably not do it. Probably not even get close. We've seen that countless times in the gym.
Well, and this just takes things to the extreme, like to the ridiculous. Someone who has the strongest fingers, blah, blah, blah in the world, but has never climbed. What do we see happening? And I just think that this highlights why there's people who are some of the best in the world at climbing and don't do what is thought of as training. And so when you go onto a climb and you say, okay, I'm going to really need to lean into this Gaston, and that is your sole focus of doing that move. You understand, like, okay, what is this move asking me to do? And I'm going to commit to that. Well, you need all those attributes, like, or all those attributes will be used and worked and tested, but that is not your focus. That is not what you are doing. You are simply trying to really understand this movement and adopt the position, the movement through. God, it's so hard to define, but you're trying to climb the climb as best as possible. And those attributes may be a limit for you to do a move, but they only give you potential. Like you are still limited by your physical strength, like there's always going to be an aspect of that. But what I really learned from you and talking about Serato and all these, you named a bunch of other ones in that same clip, but that's what the focus needs to be. And that's why training is a wholly different thing. We're not saying never train. We're just saying it's a wholly different topic.
You just get like, So the reason why I use Serato so much, because on paper, on a lot of different climbs, I mean, he was climbing with Jakob, as Dylan Countryman, who's on our team. Toby Roberts was there, and like, it wasn't to say that Serato was leading the charge. That's for sure. Most people would probably watch and be like, oh wow, surprisingly, he's not that good on the spray wall compared to like these guys, right? So because he's always winning and he's always ahead, and it's like, for me, that was the most fascinating thing. Was like, well, the way I see it is that his system, the way he looks at climbing, the way he trains himself, you fuel that guy with stronger metrics, he will be the best. And so he has focused on things that once you give it, because that's how people work, man. People aren't just robots. We're not robots. We're brain-fueled, soul-fueled, heart-fueled decision makers, right? And so if you give me, and that's how I view my life as well, you give me the bicep, I can use the bicep for what I want to use the bicep for. You give me the shoulder, I can use the shoulder with what I'm supposed to do. So his ability to solve climbing is like paramount. It's like at the top, man. Like watching him position his body and like really go for it, lean in for the amount of time he was doing it, the frequency, like I said, of him doing that, I was like, dude, if you got this guy stronger, and he's already really strong, but if you got that guy stronger, which he can obviously get stronger, he can use that strength appropriately for what he needs to be getting done. And he knows that. So you got other guys right next to him who are much stronger than him, for sure, in their respective ways. Probably if you really wanted a whole ratio down, I think Serato has like some of the strongest gecko ability. His open-handed strength is just absurd. Everything else is probably beatable by every other World Cup climber in that level, in like a semifinal level. Like he's actually probably weaker than a lot of them in that way. Take that with a grain of salt. He could be stronger, but just my read. That just doesn't matter at a certain point, right? Like these guys are way stronger. It's just proof that, and not to take a hit on those guys either, that's just what shows how difficult climbing actually is, right? I explained in the last podcast when we're talking about this, like, Josh, you know how to swing a golf club? I know how to swing a golf club. Can we swing a golf club accurately every time? Do we know how to correct it every time? Like, it's a simple movement, right? Swing back, swing forward, smack, you throw the ball, you hit the ball, right? But like, think about climbing where each finger, each body position, like the dimension of where you are in the wall, like how you're generating momentum, how you're maintaining tension. That's all each little swing of a golf club. This guy knows how to swing the golf club and all parts of his body and all the little metrics very, very, very well, right? And so if I gave you a 7-iron, right, and I said, hit the ball as far as you can, as well as you can, you could, and it wouldn't go as far as if you used it with a driver, right? If you just pick up a driver, and even if you maybe aren't as good with the driver, it will just go further. It's a different instrument, right? Give this guy a different instrument, and he'll use the instrument the best you can use the instrument, right? And so I think that's really proper for training because he's like 19. And so like I started gaining muscle at 19, man. Like my body started looking a little bit different at 19. I'd already climbed like many double digits at that point for me and was like getting stronger at that point. And I'm 25 now and I feel so much stronger than I was at 19, right? So let's see what this guy does. But that's kind of the whole idea here, is like this guy understands how to use his instruments over the long term. And it's because of the way he's approached the mentality to training and climbing, right?
Dude, I love climbing. You said something about swinging a golf club and it's a simple movement, and golf is, I don't know. I don't want to say negative things about golf. I want to argue that climbing is probably one of the most complex sports in existence. And I could just be making that up. I actually have a hunch that some of the fighting sports are really complex because you deal with a live opponent that you can't predict. And so there's like mental. So I don't know. I like watching wrestling and boxing and UFC because it seems extremely complex as well. But damn, do I love climbing. I think you just detailed why it's so interesting because it feels quite infinite. And then this talk about training and how it's appropriate and how training, maybe the thing would be like it adds fuel to the fire. Like, you already have to have the ability, and then, you have more potential by getting stronger through training. And it made me think of earlier in the podcast, you said something along the lines of Adam Ondra, like skinny back then because we were talking about early Adam Ondra, like on La Dour or something, or you're comparing him to Dave Graham.
I look at him now.
Adam Ondra's jacked, dude. Adam Ondra is a beast.
He's so strong.
But he's the best example where I think he's even talked about this. He's a little kid. All he's doing is on-sighting. Like literally all he did was go a rock climber. And I say rock climbing and just on-site. I don't think he ever trained fingers. I don't think he didn't campus. He didn't do any of that. And he climbed like 9C or something, or 9B plus. And does that mean that Adam Ondra should never train? It's like, no, actually Adam Ondra maybe trained harder than almost anyone, because I would argue that, as crazy as it sounds, Adam Ondra actually seems to be less genetically gifted than some other top climbers. And he has, he seems to genetically have really good finger strength and mobility, but I don't know, mobility can be developed. I'm not saying that he's not genetically gifted. I just mean he's probably not as genetically gifted as one might think. And his training was extremely intense and detailed, but it was layered on top of that deep understanding and earned understanding 3 years. So I thought that was cool.
I agree with all of that. I think so. I want to give some practical guidance for like this conversation, because I'm sure a lot of people will listen and be like, oh, great. So like, how do I become like Serato? A lot of us won't be there. I'll just say that right now before we go into the practical. A lot of us probably won't be there. He's done it for seemingly his entire life. People like Ondra have these like, quote, this is my guess, this is my take on this type of thought, okay? My thought here is that things like tendon strength, things like mobility and flexibility are really long-term gains. You got to do it when you're young. That's why a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I started climbing younger. Well, they don't really understand it though. Tendons just take years and years and years and years to grow in strength. And also, if you're grabbing the holds really hard, you're not developing tendon strength, right? Tendon strength comes from the hang and like opening up the tendon, using the tendon. If you're grabbing the hold, using pulley strength, and you're using extensor strength, you're using grabbing strength. It's not the same thing as tendon strength, right? And so for whatever reason, kids who aren't strong at grabbing just lank out and like, go on their skeletal structure, their tendon structure. And you do that amount of load over a long period of time, your tendons will get very strong and very robust. So you kind of need time on certain things. There are certain gains you don't need that much time on, right? Like technical gains, right? And so if you can if you can master your curve of like, well, some things are going to take a long period of time and a lot of volume for my body to go through. There's certain things that I can teach myself moment to moment really quickly. The people who are going to get really good at climbing are the ones who can play those lines really, really well. The way that I see strength, like quicker gains in strength, not so quick to like, for example, if you want to learn how to dyno to a hold, you got to learn how to load your feet and time that properly. That's a quick gain. I can teach you that in a session. I can teach you how to dyno better than probably what you're doing. And let's say you're really, really good at it. I could probably teach you how to get more distance very, very quickly. I probably can. I could guess that. But to increase 5 or 10 pull-ups into your toolbox, that's going to take a little bit of time, but that's still pretty quick relative to like being able to hang a small edge for a lot longer, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to paint the picture here on. These types of strengths in the middle ground give you buffer room. So if you're unable to understand the best way to move or the best way to hold a position or the best way to get from point A to point B, like Serato can, or really trust your feet, you want to have buffer room. You want to be able to grab a hold and pull on it and really understand, like, or you really don't want to have the sensitivity of the margins where you're like, oh, if I don't do it the proper way, I'm just going to be off. Most people don't want to climb most things like that. And so that's why I think it is important to train. It is important to have buffer room because we're probably slow learners. Like that's the really interesting part of this conversation is that I would still advise most people to train. I would still advise most people to gain that buffer room so you can just have more volume, have more fun, like teach yourself on more terrain. But when you take that sensitivity to the terrain, or when you go onto the terrain, be sensitive to the learning things, because the buffer is not where we want to learn off of. I think too many people are like, oh, maybe I'm not strong. The amount of times I hear I'm not strong enough to do something. And it's like, dude, that's a really insensitive way to answer that question of why you fell, right? Like you should ask yourself every time. That's why we are so hard on this in this podcast. If you fall, ask yourself and get better and better and better at answering this question. Why did you really fall, right? And don't assume it's strength. Don't assume it's not strength, actually, right? Because you're going to get stronger. We're going to work on those buffer rooms. People like Serato seemingly don't need that because of how good he is at asking and answering those questions. Why did I fall? So if you can rely on that, you don't really need that much strength. If you can't really rely on that so much, or you don't want to, or you want to balance like someone like Adamandra or like Serato long term, work on both. Work on both. But I'll tell you this for a fact. The more your buffer room exists, the harder it is to answer and ask those questions. It's a guarantee. I guarantee you it's more difficult to understand truly why you can't do something if you have more buffer room to say like, but I can just pull harder. I can just squeeze this hold harder, right? That's so confusing for people.
That was really good, Tim. That was really good.
Thanks, man. I
like a little head tap there. Well, this idea of buffer room and having strength allows you, because the truth is we're not perfect either. And sometimes you don't, I'm sure Serato does not always do the move the most optimal way. And, then his little extra gecko ability kicks in and he still does the move. We just want to minimize that. And so what you're saying is be careful focusing on building the buffer and getting sucked into that trap instead of increasing the actual movement quality and needing less buffer. And what made me think of, Tim, is our chat with Palmer and Palmer Larson and route setting, and how he said, look, I can set something. And he called it degrees of freedom in setting, where if you have an in-cut hold, you can use your strength. It's like, okay, you're balancing on a slab and then you give someone a little crimp. And if it's kind of in-cut, all of a sudden, instead of having to stay close to the wall, maybe you can just yard yourself close to the wall. And now the move would have gone without that crimp, but now all of a sudden it gives you all these degrees of freedom. And I thought it was interesting where he said, look, you can take that stuff away and it doesn't even make the climb easier, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't change the grade of the climb. It's still the same ask physically even. It's even the same ask physically. You just don't get to, I don't want to say cheat it. You just don't get to rely on some physical attribute. And I've said this before, Tim, and I know you've heard it too many times, but for the people who haven't heard it, I'm going to repeat it because it's something that has always stuck in my head. I did gymnastics as a kid before I started climbing. And something I realized is that it helps starting as a kid or adopting the reality of what it's like to be a kid in that you don't have strength. You haven't gone through puberty. You're fundamentally weaker. And so technique was just, God, it was technique drilled in gymnastics. And you could say, oh, well, it's good that they drilled it in, but one of the, because that's the best way to do things. And it's like, yes, but it's also was the only way to do things when you're a kid because you had no buffer. And a lot of gymnastics, you have some kind of swinging skill. I don't know, like you're swinging on the high bar, you're swinging on the parallel bars. And what you do is you use that energy from a swing to do a move, right? And that move has a strength component and it has a momentum component. And kids just could not power through a move without having that swing, without having that dynamic thing. So you go, okay, well, that's no problem. But what would happen is that you need to add up these little things. So if your legs were bent, you don't have as much momentum. It's just physics, right? It's just like the longer lever arm gives you momentum. And so you had to have straight legs. So does gymnastics require straight legs for the judges? To some extent, yeah, you don't want, it looks sloppy, but the reality is that's how you do a move the best in gymnastics. And so just take that same concept and think about climbing and, act like a little kid that's weak. And then great, you have strength. Well, the two things that allows is it literally does unlock your potential and also gives you a little bit of wiggle room, but don't get obsessed with the buffer.
Yeah. Dude, I get so it's a good way to explain it. And yeah, it's so, how many times have you guys heard or seen the team kid? It's like, dang, I guess they can just do it. And they're almost certainly weaker than you are. And then I see this classic all the time. Maybe people don't see this part as much, but kids start getting addicted to strength, right? Because they're capable of then increasing their strength so much. And a lot of them lose their technique, like a lot, and just start doing in my opinion, just really dumb things, especially relative to what they're capable of before. And the people who are really good are people who understood the kid technique, whether they were kids or not, then develop that strength and then use them cohesively when they are appropriate, right? Like that's what you're talking about in the gymnastics. It's like you can't really even get things done unless you're doing the appropriate technique. You have to do the appropriate technique. That's the almost the worst part about climbing is that anybody can climb a V0 in the gym, dude. Like anybody can grab these things and step on these things. You can climb it like horribly and still get up the wall, right? And that's why outdoor climbing is so interesting, is because those things start to disappear. The opportunity to just have that freedom, like what Palmer's talking about. Palmer's setting is much, much more like rock climbing setting, because rock climbing is not set. It's just we just climb something and give it a grade. And we're like, yeah, we're probably roughly that great. And you could climb on a V2 in Bishop and just be like, Jesus, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. But if you know what you're supposed to do, it's V2, right? And climbing is just such a weird way to understand the difficulty. You made a comment about the different types of sports and golf being almost simpler. I actually think that's what makes golf so interesting, actually, I really like watching all sports when I'm really into it. And golf is really interesting because at the highest level, it seems the most everybody has really, really similar metrics. I don't watch golf that much, but it does seem like everybody masters the swing very quickly. So when it comes to the highest level, what they're testing is that tiny, tiny factor of difference, right? Well, in climbing, we see so many different factors of differences. And I think that's why I make so many comments on climbing competitions are so behind, man, because we're just testing the same thing every time, but that's not what the sport is. Fighting, what's so interesting about fighting is that the playing field always changes. You're totally right. I actually enjoy fighting to, if I'm understanding more wider degrees of more attributes and more factors that are required to be good at fighting, that's a really complicated question to answer. I would think. I'm also not a fighter, so I'm speaking out of my ass here, but from what I understand in fighting, if I had the same approach that I have to climbing and I brought it to fighting, I would be so lost. I'd be like, well, yeah, what am I supposed to be really strong at and really good at and really able to identify? It seems like going into MMA seems so complex. And maybe that's why you look at people I don't know, Conor McGregor or just whoever's really good. I don't know the names of a lot of these guys, but I know I've watched quite a few fighters. I'm like, Jesus, these guys are so good, and they have their own style, they have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, but their identification for what they are supposed to do in any given moment is awesome. And you'll even see goated fighters lose, right? And that's also what's super interesting. And I want to see that type of stuff in climbing. I want to see us test factors that we know are important for climbing at the highest level. And I just don't think we do that all the time, unless you go rock climbing, right?
Yeah. So I think the way I want to connect some of training and this simple thing that we are talking about, and we're going into this idea of buffer and everything, is that I want to revisit this concept that we put out there around this is why we don't see, or this is why we can see some of the top climbers who don't technically train. Like they don't do a bunch of hangboard and everything. I'm not saying none of them do. And we're not saying that that wouldn't be potentially beneficial. But I think that physicality and strength is an important part of our sport. But anytime you start abstracting away from the sport, like you do pull-ups instead of a difficult move, you're actually building the strength in the best possible and specific way by doing moves in the perfect way and by doing them in a myriad of different ways. And so if you want better pull strength in climbing in the most appropriate manner for that move in front of you gives you the most appropriate type of strength for that move. And it's why when I'm in shape, maybe I wonder if I can do it right now. I can usually do a one-arm pull-up, which is not that impressive because I know you can do like a dozen. But
not anymore.
Well, and that's an interesting point there. It's just this idea, and we always talk about the lead domino or the North Star. And it's my classic example where if I climb and climb well, I can do a one-arm pull-up. If I do a one-arm pull-up, that doesn't guarantee I can climb well. So how much time should I dedicate to doing a one-arm pull-up? I'm not saying zero, I'm not saying never do anything, but just, and in gymnastics, it's actually one of the ways that people progress to these unbelievably high levels. You can't just start out by doing a Maltese or an iron cross or whatever, but you do all these movements where you are dynamically moving through them in these perfect technical ways. And it slowly but surely builds up the strength and that whole momentum I talk about with the swing. And eventually at some point, you actually theoretically could do it without a swing. And so, build the strength through the moves ideally. And then, yes, we will start applying it to even more difficult moves using amazing techniques. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of showing why. I think it really helps us understand what climbing is and what training is and why they're so different.
Yeah. I want to make a point here. I think you said that beautifully. I think it makes a lot of sense. One thing that you said was really interesting to me is that when you start to take certain attributes of movement or things that you understand in technical climbing and you abstract it, you take it and then you start training that specifically. Well, that's good. You're going to expedite that strength building, right? Like you're saying in gymnastics, you can just do the same motion over and over again. You do it with dynamics, and then you, of course, gain. But that's like slow. That takes a long, long time, right? And it's like, in climbing, I want to be able to just but I want to do this project, Josh. Like, how am I supposed to expedite myself to just do this project? It's like, well, this specific project, you're totally right. And this is where the trap is in climbing, is that if you want to just get your project done, you're right. You should just expedite your body to like get yourself to doing that project, right? And that's fine. You're going to do that project. So do it again, over and over and over and over and over again on a wide variety of projects and a wide variety of holds. That's the way I would do it. The way I would do it is understand certain, like, that's the thing is like, I'm not to say, in my opinion and my philosophy for my climbing, I definitely want to train. I love the feeling of expediting my body to a place where it's super strong. The only thing is that every time in my training that I have gotten stronger at something, I've done extra work to teach myself how to use it. That's the biggest thing I want to leave you guys with. It's if you're going to expedite a part of your body, a part of some metric to get stronger, to get better at something, and you haven't applied that to a climb yet, you haven't applied that to climbing movements yet, you haven't applied that to what you understand for climbing fundamentals, and if you don't even understand enough climbing fundamentals, learn those first. Like, if you don't understand, like, the relationship between certain holds and what you're supposed to do for the highest likelihood of success, that's fundamental and you should understand that. Then once you have that and you get new strength, you teach yourself new ways to use that comfortably, effectively, quickly, confidently. You keep doing that cycle. And that's what I see from really strong climbers and really good climbers. I think Serato is a good example of someone who does it in the cleanest way. And so for the longest term, he will probably be the best climber, in my opinion, if he works on it for the rest of his life or for the next decade. My guess, I'm going to put it on Testpiece podcast episode 100. I think Serato is one of the best climbers of all time if he works on that. He's setting his body up. He's setting his systems up. He's setting up his understanding for identification of climbing movements in the best way to accept, in my opinion, to accept the metrics, to accept and then fuel it and use that fuel properly. And that's how we want to train, right? It's like, all right, we can do it backwards if we want to, but just remember that you have to train, you have to practice a lot. That's why I brought up this word practice in climbing, like before in the podcast. And we don't talk about that type of stuff a lot in climbing, like when we're sessioning in the gym or hanging out with friends or having fun, because I don't think we see climbing as practice very much. But once you understand that it could be practiced, once you understand that, oh, I understand some fundamentals, I understand some things I'm supposed to do with my body, I understand sequences, I understand this new strength that I just got, you got to practice using that strength to the best way, right? And take that word with a grain of salt. We're not saying the easiest way. We're not saying the way that makes you feel or look the strongest. The best way to solve something.
The system. I just want to highlight and say again what you said around Serato is that what I took from that is Serato has an incredibly good system installed. And if he continues to focus on what he's doing in that system, he will become the best, or, he will be very, very good. He's already, he's really good already. He will become even better because he will just get stronger and it will feed into the system and he will do better and better. Where if you have the wrong system, your ceiling is limited. You may not realize where your ceiling is, but it's limited. And so that's why we're so systems focused. And I got Tim, you talked about fundamentals, and I just want to point out that, we're saying just do the simple thing, like climb the best way it's possible. And we know very deeply that it is much easier said than done to just do the move the best way possible. But that is the exact rabbit hole that you should go down forever. And we do try to address that, and we will. Maybe that'll be the next pod. But we understand that is infinitely complex, just like a golf swing is infinitely complex. We just really want to set up that system and structure and help ourselves and everyone understand why that's the direction. That's the rabbit hole to go down. That's the one. And I'll hand it back to you, Tim. And I want to ask you one practical thing on that, and then we can put a pin in it.
Sure.
Okay. You don't want, okay. You just like what I said. You didn't have to, to correct me. Okay. So on that note of doing the simple thing, trying to find the best way up a climb, and, and this appropriate method without bias. I think we covered why it's without bias towards our strengths or our preferred method, and really being more objective and neutral. The thing is, Tim, especially now, sometimes things hurt old injuries or are a little bit tweaky. And I recognize that the optimal way it may not be the optimal way for me in this body on that day at that time with that friction. And so how do you navigate when you see someone do something and you're like, dude, that drop knee really, God damn, that looks good. And you can just tell, you're like, the deep drop knee is the way to do it. My knee feels like it's going to explode. And you definitely don't want your system to lead you towards a catastrophic knee injury, and we don't want someone to be like, oh, this is the right way, and that blew up my knees, but I'm just going to keep trying it that way. So how do you navigate that?
So the quick answer is it's never worth it. No matter what, almost no matter what. In my opinion, the quick answer is that almost any position that can compromise your body in a lasting way is not worth it. If you're going to get tired from, the other example to that would be this climb, if I try really hard on it, will just get me so tired that I can't try the next climb for the rest of the session. That's not compromising you in a lasting way. Common positions or movements that would compromise your body in a lasting way would be like jumping into Gastons, underclings that are above your head, super deep contorted drop knees.
You're just like my left, my wrist on my left hand doesn't work anymore. Underclings from over I heard it on me, and a Gaston.
I'll tell you my
shoulder. Oh God, dude, you're making me like cringe over here,
dude. Like Salt Lake World Cup boulder number 4 in the final. I didn't even listen to Alex Honnold talk about it. I was saying the same thing out loud watching it. I was like, somebody's going to hurt themselves. that's not a situation where it's worth it. This really close stem where you have to turn your knee inwards, or at least you decide to, it's not worth it. You're gonna compromise your body in a lasting way. So those types of situations, there's a lot of them.
And they're different for each person. I just want to point out that some people
and they are different for each person.
just drop knee and they feel great, but yes, someone hurt their knee on that, didn't they?
So those are possible positions where if your body is not capable, whether it's in terms of morphology or strength, it could be morphology and it could be strength. You're going to look at it in a long-term and a short-term approach. This is my real answer for you. So the quick answer is just probably avoid it. Like for me nowadays, especially when I was younger, I didn't care. I just jump for things and then make an assessment afterward if that was worth it or not. And luckily, I just didn't get very injured very often in those ways. But I got a lot of other injuries, finger related, and that's the same type of thing. The long-term approach is, can I get my body to a place where if I did it the same way, that it wouldn't be dangerous for me? And that is, if it's morphology related, probably not. Like that's why you should ask yourself in the long term. If it's a tight press, a tight stem, and you in that position, no matter how much mobility or flexibility work you do, you can't really turn your body into a place, or it's just like that's the type of position. Like an undercling above your head is rarely going to feel better over time with no matter what type of work that you do. That's just usually a dangerous thing. And so my other answer to that, other than the long term and the short term approach, is some moves might just not be meant to be done for people. It's an opinion that I have. I'm going to stand by that. I think route setters should avoid that. I got mad when I watched the Salt Lake Bouldering World Cup #4. I know the route setters who were there. I'm not really saying bad things about them, but it is a poor choice, in my opinion, ever to put that type of compromising move in a World Cup, especially before an Olympic qualifying series event. That was horrible, in my opinion. That's what I'm saying is like there are moves that you can expect injury on. There's no point in doing that stuff in competition. And so if you know that there's movements that are probably expecting that, the short-term approach is try to load it in a way. So there's two approaches in the short term, which is like find a new way to do it for sure. Understand why it's hurting and see if you can do everything else in your body to support that, right? So if you're reaching up into an undercling, can you get higher? Can you like put more weight on something else to get higher into it? If you can't do that, you can't change your beta, I would say go to the long term and say, well, is there a long-term thing? And otherwise at that point, you should really just avoid that stuff. Does that answer the question? All right.
It does. I like that long-term versus short-term. I like the morphology, I also really like just, you need to understand that not all moves are for everyone. And I think that's a really hard thing to hear as a younger person, a younger guy or girl, because I still do I want to be the best climber in the world. It's like, no, I have to do all the moves. And that's not actually true. There's going to be moves that Jimmy Webb can do that Sean Bailey can't, and vice versa. And that's okay. And so I think I like that you put that out there. And I would say that when I've thought about this, if there's a move on a climb and I think it's going to hurt me, you could just say, I will not do that move. And so, or I will not do that move that way. Now what? Just, and really being able to let that ego and that excuse go and just say, okay, I can't do that. Tim, you can't do that left heel hook, right? It's just, no, this is literally not an option. Like, but that doesn't mean I can't do the climb. That is not an option for me. And so the ability to really push that out of your head and then ask the exact same question, how do I do it the best way possible with no bias? Yeah.
I will say the quickest thing though is that I do think people leave low-hanging fruit way too quickly in that same realm where I'll see people say like, that's just too tweaky for me. It's like, well, you didn't really try that many other betas, right? Like that's why I said the short term is like pick a different beta first, see if you can support yourself into doing the same sequence. And then if you still can't do it, then decide to do completely, different things or just avoid the climb entirely or treat it as a long-term thing. So there's definitely a lot of low-hanging fruit for people that they leave on the table.
I'll also say that people often don't actually understand what good technique is, and something that seems tweaky may not be. And I caught a lot of flack for this, where I said something around, you shouldn't feel heel hooks in your hamstring. Although I also said, and we said, sometimes there are heel hooks that are kind of all hamstring and quote unquote wrong. But the point being there, if it feels tweaky, are you sure you actually even know how to do that technique? Maybe you don't. just check yourself. And a lot of people will do a heel hook and they will actually be doing it fundamentally wrong for a long time. And then they'll hurt themselves because they were doing it in an incorrect way. And this happens at all levels. And it's even a good thing for me to remind myself of, am I really like doing the technique correctly? Or am I just kind of afraid of it? And, loading that in the right way without hurting yourself. It's a really complex thing. And that's experience.
I'll give you a practical one that probably some people can relate to. Maybe not exactly on this climb, but I've talked about Clockwork Orange before, and Clockwork Orange is a really beautiful V12 in the craft boulders in Red Rocks. And the crux revolves around pretty high up. You grab this like 2-finger, it's really like a finger and a half, really sloped pocket. And the way sloped pockets work is they put all the stress on your flexor tendon. Flexor tendons, like I said earlier, explained that take a long time to get, they take a long time to even be able to load. And the harder you want to load it and the more intensity you want to put onto that amount of pulling, you got to put a lot of work into it. Every time I've tried Clockwork Orange when I was younger, I got to at least a place where I knew I was going to hurt myself if I pulled onto it longer. So it wasn't a technical thing. It wasn't like, I'm doing this wrong. I just literally was doing it. And the way I had to pull on the move, it was going to compromise my flexor tendon for a longer period of time. Although I knew that I had a timer on it, and I usually did push the timer a little bit too long. And as in, I knew I could pull on it maybe once, 2 or 3 times without hurting it. But if I pulled on it the 4th time, I almost certainly was going to hurt it. And I usually just like misjudged how long the timer actually was. And I hurt my flexor tendon 3 different times on it. And there were lasting injuries for weeks. It hurt super bad. It was hard for the ego. That's just an obvious one. And hopefully that's something that makes a lot of sense for you guys. Yeah, that's something that's a long-term approach. Like why would I adjust it in that moment? The best adjustment to make, like we all understand from me just talking about it, it's hard in the moment. In the moment, I'm sure you all would have been right there. I'm like so close to sending this boulder. And y'all be like, but maybe it's worth one more try. I'm like literally driving I was in high school. Like I'm only in Red Rocks for like a week. Like, that's where it gets so difficult. It's like, is it worth it? And it's like, you got to look at it long-term and short-term. Short-term could be worth it for 1 or 2 tries. Long-term, instead, next time, I should have just done the work to get there and not hurt myself when I actually pull on it. If I wanted a longer timer, if I wanted 10 tries instead of 2, I should have worked on my flexor tendon. And I did not. I did not work on it long-term. And so I just expected myself to somehow make it work. It's not going to work. So yeah, maybe that's a little bit more, instead of a technical one, that's a physical one.
Don't get injured.
Don't get injured. It sucks.
Tim, this was a really good podcast, really good number 100. I think we sketched out some of the framework that we always are poking at. And I know that this doing the simple thing over and over again is infinitely more complex than just the quote unquote simple thing. But that theory of climbing the thing in the best possible way without bias is simple. It's just that the actual way to do that is very difficult. And then sketching out kind of how training applies to being a climber and this idea of the buffer. I thought you did a really great job of explaining that. And hopefully we gave some insight into when training is appropriate. Not that we gave any suggestions on how you might train, because that's like 100 podcasts in itself. And then we didn't even talk about execution, which is a whole nother element that, we could do another 100 podcasts on that. So Tim, good one, man. Good stuff.
Yeah,
really enjoyed that.
Super fun. If your climbing brains got tickled in this way and you have, more questions or, personal videos that you guys want to dive into, join the classrooms. It's a great environment. I really like talking about this stuff for my entire life. I talk about this stuff almost every day with my friends. I'm addicted to it. I love it. Clearly, I've thought about it a lot. And Josh loves it too. We it's a ball in the classrooms. Thank you guys for listening and supporting. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yeah, go to patreon.com/Tim Testpiece, sign up, and we'll see you there. And we'll see you next time too. Take care.
See you guys. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/Testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.